If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hi, everybody. This is Bob Gale, co-creator of Back to the Future, and you're listening to Brad Gilmore.
Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Marty.
Oh, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Whoa, this is heavy.
Well, he's joining me back on the podcast, a triumphant return. I believe his third or fourth appearance. Third, maybe? I don't know. We'll find out. He is the proprietor of CollectBTTF.com, and you can get it on all the social medias, CollectBTTF. The one and only Eric Tate is back with us. Eric, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me again. Yeah, I think it's the third time.
Number 3. We're 3 in, and I have to first off start this podcast off by sending you the biggest thank you for contributing to Why We Love Back to the Future with your letter from Friends in Time on there. There it is. Look at that. The beautiful book. Love that orange, by the way. And also always overlooking and proofreading things for me. I'm like, there's 2 people, and I mean this, that I will email and text probably once every few weeks, maybe a couple months of like, hey, I just thought of this. Do you know the answer to this Back to the Future related question? And it's you and Stephen Clark. The 2 people I talk to all the time. And normally, 9 times out of 10, you give me the right answer and whatever I thought was wrong. So anybody who wants to put the label, because now I'm doing the media rounds and they're calling me, Back to the Future expert. I go, no. If you want an expert, I can point you in the direction of 2 individuals who can answer any and all questions related Back to the Future. I'm just a fan. But thank you so much for that contribution, man.
I mean, putting me in the same line as Stephen Clark there, that's pretty high praise, so I appreciate that.
Well, you already know, man. You already know. Y'all are the two Back to the Future goats as far as the knowledge base goes. But we're going to get into a lot of stuff today. One thing I'm very excited about that we're going to talk about, but just what's been going on in the world of Collect BTTF. I know you're always out to acquire more antiquities related to Back to the Future and aggregate them on the site. How's the site going? Kind of give us an update on all that.
It's going well. So for anyone who's not familiar with it, the collectbttf.com is a personal project I started a few years ago with the idea of immortalizing and categorizing the history of Back to the Future collectibles. So things that are, officially licensed or promo materials, basically anything directly related with the Back to the Future series, I've been cataloging on that site. It's been a very fun project. Right now, I believe I'm just under 1,700 items listed on there and tons more to go. I mean, anyone, if you go on there and you're like, well, where's this item? You can let me know about it. It's very likely going to come at some point, but feel free to use the submit option and just reach out. I'm always happy to chat about these things, but it's been going really well. I get a lot of really positive feedback from fans. So it's been very worthwhile. I love it.
I mean, 1,700 items and counting is quite the entry into this Collect BTTF world. What's been the one recently that you're like, wow, this is a cool one?
I've always been a fan of a lot of the international items, just because you get to see the different cultures and all that, and what fans appreciate in various countries around the world. So most recently, I'd probably say the things that fascinated me the most was I had categorized all the entries that had been listed on the Back to the Future the musical's Tokyo production. And they had put up their merch on an online catalog, and I had to use Google Translate to be able to read any of it. But it was just so cool, having been to the Broadway show, the national tour, and familiar with what's been done over in London, the merch in Japan has been very exquisite and unique. I mean, you can get Back to the Future themed chocolate bars and, various stuffed animals, a calligraphy pen, like all this really cool stuff that you don't see in the US. And it's like, all right, I love that culture. So it's been fascinating.
A calligraphy pen. I go to the merch, anything merch related. The number one, I think, American item, right, would be a baseball hat, which we are both currently wearing. That is always like a go-to for every merch item. And I love that the Japanese are like, yeah, we're going to do calligraphy pen, all right, because we're a little bit more refined over here.
And just to correct myself, I say calligraphy pen off the top of my head. I forget if it's specifically marketed for calligraphy, but it's like a custom pen, like very fancy. It comes in a special box and all that for Back to the Future the musical. But it's just, I just love seeing like just the unique items that come out of, especially Japan, but various countries around the world. It's just great to see. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with like the Germany production that's coming up. So we'll see.
So how does that work? Let me ask you, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, like as far as the business of side of it goes, do they, when they have these productions internationally, are the merchandising rights, are they licensed out to like local merchandising manufacturers, or why is there like the difference in the different kind of items? Is it just, are they different locally for each, region? They have different rights over there or for producing?
Well, I don't have any sort of official answer. I can only make a guess.
Sure.
But there is a lot of overlap between the US and the UK's merch. And there's been some items here and there that have only been in the US, only been in the UK. But with Japan being so unique, I have to assume it's some sort of local licensing deal.
Yeah.
I'm guessing when they were coming up with the Tokyo production, they made a deal with I don't remember the name of the company off the top of my head that runs the merch site for them, but I'm assuming it's some sort of just deal with that company.
Now, historically, has Japan had some other like great Back to the Future merchandise, whether they be from international releases of the movie, the theme park ride, the game, anything, or comics, anything specifically that has stood out to you over the years?
Oh, yeah. So there has been, focusing on Japan for a moment, there's been a ton of unique merch that has come out of Japan, especially with Universal Studios. And even to this day, Universal Studios still pumps out in all their parks, but especially in Japan, they're always pumping out unique things. So you'll find like, random unique keychains and things of that nature. There is something really cool coming out of Japan that has been announced for this year. Really, really hoping for some sort of at least limited release in the US, and that is something fans have been asking for. Are you familiar with like Hot Toys doing the scale models of the DeLoreans, like the big like 1/6 scale DeLoreans?
Of course, yeah.
I forget the exact scale this is going to be, but it's somewhere along those lines. But Bandai in Japan is finally releasing what everyone's been asking for, the train. So they are releasing a large scale model of the Part 3 train, which has never been released in an official capacity. So that's coming, and I just got to figure out how to get my hands on that.
Oh my gosh. I just felt like a little boy on Christmas just now, because that train, and I talk about it a bit in the book, but that train in recent years has really grown on me as such a great piece of Back to the Future iconography that I think because Part 3 has grown on me. And we've had this conversation before, but a lot of the times, like I find myself saying Part 3 is my favorite now. Just because of I don't know. It's hard to say one's not your favorite, but Part 3 is just so much fun. I guess it's a lot of fun in Part 3. And to end with that train was just a great commentary on Doc's persistence. Because if one thing that we know about Doc, even though he tries and fails, and he finally invents something that works, it's that persistence of the character that pays off. And there's something about the time train that I love that it's never explained. I love that we don't have to try to figure it out or think about it too much. It's just Doc Brown, he did the impossible by inventing time travel, and then he did the impossible by inventing time travel in 1885 or thereabout in the 1880s and created this train. and the beautiful look of the train. I could talk about it all day, Eric, as you can tell.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
It's interesting you said that. I came across, I believe it was a Reddit thread just the other day where someone asked the question, how do you feel Back to the Future 3 would have been if it ended on Marty saying, well, Doc, it's destroyed, and then cue to the credits, no return of Doc, no train, and all that. And people had varying opinions. I'm guessing your opinion is probably going to be the same as mine. My opinion was, hell no. like because then you're ending the greatest trilogy of all time basically on a cliffhanger. What happened to Doc? What's his whereabouts? Whatever. What was his fate and all that. Whereas that train was part of the story being wrapped up in a bow and giving us a solid conclusion. I wouldn't change it for anything.
I wouldn't change it either. And I know that people on Reddit always have, sometimes those Reddit groups have some great ideas and great theories that I love just reading the comments on and going down the rabbit hole and thinking like to myself, but that's one I do not agree with. I think that if Back to the Future was a singular movie, right, and that was how it ended, is they got stuck in the past and only Marty got back, and we had to have like this ambiguous ending of what happened to Doc. I always think back to The Wrestler. You've seen The Wrestler, right, with Mickey Rourke? Mm-hmm. So the end of the movie is he's going to go up for the ram jam on the top rope. This is his character has some heart issues and they're playing through it throughout the movie, and then he goes up and he's having like this heart palpitation or what have you, and he jumps off the top rope, and then the movie ends. So we don't know if he lives, if he dies, if he went, whatever. That's just how it ends. I like that ending because it was a singular contained story. All right, and you know what? Let the audience figure it out. Or Tarantino's What's in the Briefcase in Pulp Fiction. Some of those are okay. But for Back to the Future, especially the end of a trilogy, you want to see the two characters you fell in love with have some sort of reuniting, like a reunion, and then we can end at least the trilogy knowing Doc was okay. He actually went and did the thing that he never thought he would do, is find true love, have children. Marty and Jennifer are okay. Everybody's okay. That's what we want. Come on, we want to feel good, Eric. Everyone's okay.
Exactly. We need it to be wrapped up. And to your point about if it was just a single movie, single story, you might already know this, but the original Back to the Future, it was never supposed to be a trilogy.
Right.
It was originally just part one. Well, it wasn't even part one. It was just Back to the Future. To Be Continued wasn't added until the home video release of it. That wasn't in theaters. So the whole ending where Doc comes back, says, you got to come back with me. Something's happening to your kids. The whole thing, Mr. Fusion, everything. That was in essence put in kind of like it's just a gag ending. I mean, it was just to give the movie a fun ending and just fly off into the distance. And that was supposed to be the end of the story. And then obviously they made the sequels and all that. And I believe it was Bob Gale that had said that if they knew originally they weren't going, or they were going to make sequels, they wouldn't have ended it like that, because they kind of typecast themselves into how they had to write part two at that point.
Right.
So, if obviously, things can change over time, like what happened with Back to the Future. But I agree with you. If you have something like that on a singular story, it's fine. But if you were going to try and end the Back to the Future trilogy after everything that happened on a cliffhanger, it would have been bad.
It would have been a bad call. Now, going to what you were just talking about is if they didn't, obviously it was like a joke ending from what Bob Gale says, like, hey, we're just gonna have this little funny thing. They fly off in a future bomb. And you know what? What if it did stop there? What a great ending to the movie that would have been, just in general. Like, what a great ending. Now I know they say they kind of pigeonholed themselves as far as what they could do with the sequels, and they had to pick right back up there. But I've thought about it before. I don't know how you make a better story than how they went into the second movie. Because that's such a great way to pick up. Is we're seeing this right after the events of Back to the Future 1. We're picking back up. I think if they would have taken the, let's say, Ghostbusters 2 route, and we see them years later and things aren't working out well or whatever, and then there's another reason to get back into the time machine and do this again, I think it wouldn't have felt as fun as going right back into Back to the Future.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I would normally in a situation like this say, you know, they just got lucky, but I think it's an unintentional effect of just the genius of the Bobs. You know, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, they, even without the idea of having a sequel, they unintentionally knew how to write the perfect ending to give them that possibility.
Yeah.
So it just happened to work out in their favor. And just like I said about the ending of part 3, I wouldn't change a thing. I know, like you said, they were pigeonholed into how they could write part 2, but I love part 2. I don't want part 2 to be different. So give it to me exactly as it is. I'm happy.
Well, and you know what, you and I have talked about it, I think offline before, but just that paradox script in Back to the Future Part 2 and 3 and the way that it was going to actually play out is way different than what we ended up getting. But so is the original draft of Back to the Future. It's so different from the Back to the Future that we got in theaters. I'm talking when Marty's the video pirate and he's, you know, copying the movies for, was he copying for Doc or no? No, they were just friends still and we didn't know why, right? In that first draft.
So, yeah.
And then Marty knocks
it's been a while since I read it, but yeah.
Marty knocks the Coca-Cola into the flux capacitor or whatever, and that's what makes the time machine possible, if my memory serves.
I need to go back and like reread that in detail. It's been so many years since I've read through that.
Yeah, I believe that was what it was. Marty, let's just make sure that I'm right about this, but I'm pretty sure Marty puts accidentally knocks some Coca-Cola and invents time travel. And like that's what makes it work. But Marty was a video pirate. Yeah, in the first script, Marty accidentally spilled Coke into the power circuits of the time machine, resulting in a chemical reaction between the cola and the plutonium that made it possible to generate enough electricity to make time travel possible. There you go. So Marty, was going to be a video pirate, which is really interesting. Very interesting. But that is in the original version of the script, which I want to read that one again too. Because it's been some time since I read the first draft of the Back to the Future screenplay, because it takes place in 82, not 85. It's a power converter, I think, instead of a flux capacitor. Things like that. You know, he has the pet chimp. Marty's girlfriend is Susie. He's a video pirate. Eileen Baines is the mother. So there's some of those differences. So it's worth actually going back to check that one out if it's been some time. I might do a reading one day on this podcast. But look.
It wouldn't have had as much of a cultural impact. It would have been so far past, you know, reality between the pet chimp, the like nuclear ending and all that. Like, I think it would have taken it too far into the realm of sci-fi. I think with Back to the Future, one of the big things that always has gravitated, you know, fans towards it has been, it's been sci-fi, and obviously there's things that will never happen in real life, but it still was really close to reality in terms of the way the characters are and interact with each other and all that. So, you know, taking it closer to like a Star Trek level of sci-fi would not have been a good idea.
I wouldn't have enjoyed that. And the thing about Back to the Future is, yes, it's a time travel movie. Yes, it's a sci-fi movie in a lot of ways. Yes, it's an action movie in some ways. But it's really a character story about this family unit more than anything. And like it's the ties to the reality of situations that not anybody would find themselves in, but it's the heart of the movie is what makes it work, I guess is what I'm trying to say, propelling it forward, which is a great transition point to why we have you here today. It was a couple months ago, I was at the Reality Wrestling television tapings, and I got a text on my phone from you, and you said that you found a particular item that you finally procured into your possession. And I literally was like, said out loud, and I'm in the production meeting, so I've my director is there, Kevin Barnhart, shout out to Kevin, Booker T is there, and I read this text, I go, no way, and I put my phone down like that, and everyone looks at me, and they're like, what happened? I go, he found it, he's got it, and I had to explain the situation to everybody, and then they still looked at me like I was crazy. But tell everybody exactly why I marked out so much over your text message.
All right. So,
Ooh, buddy.
Yeah, this is an item that has been on my personal, you hear that term like holy grail items for people with collections and stuff. This has been one of my personal grail items for a very long time, as long as I've been doing this. Um, Seen every once in a while, one or two come up for sale. I've missed out on them. Finally got my hands on it. Admittedly, no fancy story from some big contacts or anything. It was a lucky eBay find. Um, and finally got my hands on it. But it is where it all began. This is not a reprint, it's an original. This is an original 1940 University City, Missouri yearbook. This is the yearbook of Bob Gale's father. I even marked the page just so I wouldn't have to waste any of your time. This is the page that started Back to the Future.
Wow.
Right there. If you can, let me turn off the blur.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Turn the blur off. But I saw an image of a rather striking individual, handsome man. And that is Mark Gale. Mark Gale, class president. So we have a. Everyone says it on the beginning. It says what? The dial. What does that say at the top of the page there? If you could read it.
It is class of June 1940. The dial for 1940. I guess that's either the school's theme or whatever. It's on the front as well. If you can see it embossed on there.
Yeah.
The dial 1940. So this is the yearbook that started it all. It was, I believe, 1980 when Bob Gale came across his dad's yearbook and came across that exact page I just showed you and wondered to himself, well, would I have been friends with my dad when he was in high school, if we went to high school together? And from there, that inspired the story of Back to the Future and goes on from there. So I think the way I had mentioned it, like on social media, was like, as far as our real life timeline. So I'm not counting items that existed in fiction in the 1800s. I'm talking about like actual real items. This is the oldest direct tie-in to Back to the Future in existence. And some people challenged me and said, well, what about the books that Doc uses along his 1885 train track in the barn? I'm like, all right, we don't have to nitpick about it, but you get the point. So this is the yearbook that inspired this. This one actually used to belong to one of Mark Gale's classmates.
Wow.
There is one or two like classmate signatures in it. But that page happened to be pristine, so I was very happy to see that. But yeah, this is the yearbook that started it all. Without Bob Gale finding this yearbook and having that thought to himself, you and I may not be talking right now.
I think that we very well wouldn't be talking right now at all, because it's just, what a phenomenal find. What an incredible find. And so let's walk through it a little bit. Okay. So were you just doing eBay searches like consistently over some months, over some years to try to find it, and then it popped up? Like, kind of walk us through how many times have you tried to find this book, and has it only been through eBay that you've been able to figure it out?
No, I've looked for this from other places in the past. I've spoken to just people saying, because I have a few other yearbooks. I actually have Bob Gale's senior yearbook as well, so technically I have both of theirs.
And what was his year that he graduated?
I don't remember, honestly. I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, you're good.
But I had been looking for it for a while, and on eBay, I have, various searches set up with alerts so that if there's new hits on certain things. And I've got a few custom, I guess, queries in there for, 1940 University City yearbook, stuff like that. And a lot of times things come up and it's not relevant. I just move past it. And it just so happened one of my alerts flagged it and this came up. The person who sold it did know what they had. This wasn't like a case of some random person selling an old yearbook and didn't realize the history behind it. So the listing did say like Back to the Future, Mark Gale, blah 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 blah. So it put a little bit of a premium on the price, but I still got what I consider to be an incredible deal on it, and the rest is history. So,
Wow. Okay. So the person you said who sold it was one of the classmates of Mark Gale. Is that what you said?
oh, I don't know. I don't think they personally were. I don't know their direct relation with the person, but the yearbook itself, I found out from the seller. I forget if it was on the listing, but I did have a brief conversation too. It came from a former classmate. Whether that former classmate is this seller's relative, friend, or just some thrift find, I'm not sure. Estate sale, who knows?
So you've seen only a couple of these come up over the years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've tried to, were you just outbid before and you weren't able to get it?
So I can remember 2 times off the top of my head. One time I was outbid, and another time it was just gone before I could even go in to purchase it.
And you don't have to say exactly what you paid for it, but what have you seen these kind of, float at price wise, like from low, give me a low to a high range?
I don't remember how much. So the one time that I got outbid, it was in the mid 3 figures. I mean, it wasn't crazy, but it was, it wasn't $20.
Right.
Just
We're
put it
talking
that
maybe
way.
$400-500 or something. Maybe
Yeah,
around
like
there.
about that. And the time it was just bought before I even saw it, I didn't see what the price was, so I have no idea.
Okay. So yeah, so we're probably looking at low range. If you were to be able to find one of these online, a few $100s at the very least is kind of what
Yes.
we're looking at from a low side.
Yeah, and I will say that this one didn't even cost me that much, so I got a really good deal.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, now was it a buy it now feature?
No, this one was auction.
Auction.
So I was really worried because this was one of those like I will have to explain myself to my wife if this goes up really high in price, but at the same time I wasn't going to let it slip. So full disclosure, it was about 130, which to my frugal wife, it's like you spent $130 on an old writing yearbook. But to me, it's like I only spent $130 on this yearbook.
That's how I was thinking.
So,
I was like, oh man, what a deal. I would have double paid for that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. So you win the auction, and I'm sure when the counting minutes down, you kept refreshing. Okay, I'm good. Because those snipers come in. I'm sure it happens a lot, with stuff that you've tried to procure over the years. The snipers at the very end, where they come in and all of a sudden the price goes from $52 and all of a sudden you're at $160 within a couple minutes. You're like, whoa, what happened here? What happened? So you were the top bidder the whole time?
No, I'm not going to lie. I sniped it.
You're one of those guys. It was you.
I'm not always, but I was not taking any chances here.
I understand. I'm not mad at it. So you were the sniper. So you were watching it, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go all in here in the closing minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
with about 5 seconds left.
You dirty rat.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I would have done the same thing. It probably would have been down to me and you if had I known about the listing. So, okay. You get it in the last 5 seconds. There's probably just a thrill of dopamine that goes through your body that you finally got this thing after the years. Now, walk me through your getting it in the mail. Because this is how nerdy I'm going to get. How long did it take to get there? Because I'm sure you're counting the days down. And then you get it out of the mail. Walk me through that part.
So my heart was racing when the auction ended because especially with eBay auctions themselves, once it ends, it takes a few seconds for everything to calculate to know if you were actually the winner and all that. And I'm like, oh, don't let me. Like, when I put in my max bid, like if I had lost it because someone threw in like some huge max bid of like $2,000 and it got up to there somehow, like some other two people were bidding against it, I wouldn't like, I'd be pissed that I lost it, but at the same time, I'm like, all right, I'm okay. But if I had lost it by like $2, I probably would have like broken a window. And So it ended. I was the winner. I paid immediately. I didn't want to take any chances, and I got it. I think it was within a week, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
And to the seller's credit, it was packaged really well. It was wrapped in like 3 layers of bubble wrap inside of a cardboard box, and just came very well prepared. And considering the yearbook is, let's see, how many years old are we
80,
talking about at this point?
85? Is that
Yeah,
right?
something like that.
And my
yeah.
dad's 80
But
and he's born in 45. So yeah,
yeah,
85 years.
yeah, yeah. Considering it's 85 years old, it's still in great condition. I mean, is it mint condition right out of the yearbook factory? No, of course not. But it's in great condition. So it's one of my prized items now. Yeah.
Well, think about that though. That is a longer time from the time of the production of that yearbook to now than it was from 1885 to 1955.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
that's true.
5 years older. Wow, that's crazy. Okay. So you open it up. First off, the leather bounding looks really great. This is kind of also harkening back to an era where they made things to last. My yearbooks are probably like disintegrated by now, and this like looks really good. Good leather. It looks like not super thick, so I guess it's not a huge class. But could you read off some of those officers again? So he was the president of the graduating class. The dial is the name of the yearbook. I remember ours was called Orinda or something like that, which I'm not even sure what that means. That was the name of our yearbooks, Orinda. Did your yearbook have like a thing?
It did, but I forget what it was. Like our school's mascot was the Bears, and I don't remember what the yearbook. It might have been like the Emerald something.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Our mascot has changed since I graduated. It was the Redskins was the original name of the mascot, and then it changed a few years ago. When everything else kind of did. Like when the team, the NFL team changed name. Okay, read us some of those officer names there. Who do we got?
Yeah, so let's see if I can do this kind of like I'm like reading at a library and kind of.
Yeah, I feel like an infant. Go ahead.
So
wow, what a yearbook.
Oh, and here's something I never even put two and two together on until just now. I don't know if this was unique to the time period or if it was area, but like this is the class of January 1940, and then Mark on the right is part of the class of June 1940.
I'm seeing that.
So I guess they split it up, I guess, by half years. I'm not sure.
Well, because like in university, right? If you you either graduate in the winter or the what is it, the spring, right? So I guess that's kind of what they were doing for high school. But yeah, continue.
I guess, but I mean, this was high school. Like when I went to high school, it was just
y'all graduated in May or June or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were just the class, in my case, class of 2002. I mean, it was just, that's how it was.
Well, who was the president of the graduating class of January of 1940?
That was Bob Rawlings.
Bob Rawlings.
And Vice President June Brown, with Ralph Blumberg as the treasurer and Adeline Brownham as the secretary.
Well, Adeline, that's definitely a name from the 1940s. You don't hear that name.
Yeah. And then joining Mark in the class of June 1940, Mark Gale as the president, and what a handsome man he was.
Very handsome. What a head of hair.
Betty, yeah, really. And you could see a lot of Bob in him.
I see it, yeah.
It's uncanny. Betty Osborne, the vice president, Bob Osbeck as the treasurer, and Pat Doyle as the secretary.
Wow, look at that thing, man. So let me ask you this. So we had Bob, what was the one in January 1940? Bob who was the president?
Bob Rawlings.
Bob Rawlings versus Mark Gale. Let's figure this out right now. Who do we feel looks more presidential? I think Gale really does, honestly.
Gale.
He looks like the leader. I feel like he would win in a fist fight between the two of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Rawlings wouldn't have to stand a chance. He looks like, and you know what? Mark Gale looks like he might, throw some bows. He looks like he's got some athletic structure to himself.
I don't think his classmates would put a kick me sign on him in the hallway.
No, I don't. So it's interesting. So I wonder if, because I'm just going off a picture here, maybe there's some more information in the yearbook, but I wonder if Mark Gale was kind of like a jock. Do we know? Was he a jock? Was
I'm
he an
not
athletic
sure.
type? He looks like it.
Yeah, I could see that. You've now got me curious. I might have to look into that. But yeah, I mean, Bob always said that the difference was like his dad seemed very like straight laced and very, serious and all that, whereas Bob saw himself as the goofball. So
Right.
it wouldn't surprise me if Mr. Gale was, very much into the straight routine of, being a good student, maybe playing some sports, stuff like
Mhm.
that, and staying out of trouble.
Staying out
Whereas
of
Bob,
trouble.
wanted to goof off.
As we all do. What a
Yep.
graduating class. Just those headshots too, man.
Yeah.
Just such a harkening back to such a different time. And you could see why if you were to find your father's yearbook and you look at that and go, "Oh, wow, man." And you start to have these same questions. Like, cuz I don't know a lot about my dad in high school, so I'd be like, "I wonder what he did. Like, who was he hanging around? Like, who were his buddies?
Yeah.
Like, what did they do for fun in 1940?" If he's 18 in 1940, so what is that? That means he's born in the 20s, right? At some point. So 1922, I guess, is around when he'd be born. So just such a different time, man. So have you thumbed through the whole yearbook, or have you just really saw the Mark Gale page and then you decided this is enough for me? I don't need to see more of the class of University City, Missouri. Wasn't it high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I've skimmed through it. Looked at the various class pages. Like, here's an example of where it had been signed at one point.
Okay.
And I've gone through. I haven't paid really much attention besides the Mark
main
Gale
page.
page. Yeah.
So I feel like for people in the Back to the Future world, that is, other than owning something from the movie itself, right? Like an actual screen used hoverboard or a piece of the DeLorean or the flux capacitor itself, an actual Pepsi Perfect. There's like some, right? But I feel like that is the Holy Grail because it is really like the origin of the concept. It's the moment of conception, to put it in different terms. I mean, this is like having some of the great, it's like having the quill that John Hancock wrote his name in on the Declaration, like having that just quill in your hand. This is it. This is where the America started, baby. And it feels like that's for Back to the Future. For me, to a lesser extent, I don't know how familiar you are with James Bond. Are you familiar with James Bond? Yes or no? Kind of? A little bit.
Very casually.
So Ian Fleming was the guy who wrote the James Bond novels. This is the guy who invented James Bond. And he was asked, where did you get this name, James Bond? Because when you hear that name, it sounds great. Bond, James Bond. Perfect. You can't think of a better super spy name than James Bond. And it's just so in the world pop culture, not even just the American lexicon, the European, the Japanese, everyone knows James Bond. And so he said he lived in Jamaica. Ian Fleming did after the war. He lived in Jamaica and he called his house Goldeneye, which is where the name of the game and the movie would come from. But he said that he did a lot of bird watching when he was out there. And he had a book called Birds of the West Indies. And that was his Bible, he called it out there, because it would have all the birds that he would look at and look it up. And the author of the book was James Bond. That's the guy's name. And so and he just lifted it and made it the name of his super spy. So for 1 year, similar to you, I went to rare bookstores. I went to all kinds of eBay listings, everywhere I could think of to try I could find the Birds of the West Indies, a book written in the 30s by James Bond. And then one day I finally found it and I gave it to my father for Christmas because he and I have a big Bond fandom together. But that was like, for me, not the holy grail of James Bond merchandise, but it's one of the foundational documents. It's the Magna Carta, if we're going to speak in historical documents term, which I feel like is what you have. You have the Magna Carta. You have what's based everything on, what we know of democracy, freedom, and independence in Back to the Future terms is started in that moment of conception, seeing that yearbook. And I just wonder, that is like really the genius of the Bobs and Bob Gale in particular, because 90% of people would look through their dad's yearbook, see that, not think twice about it. Be like, oh, dad's graduating, president's graduating class. Oh, that's cool. Boom, move forward. But he was like, this is it. This is how we can get into the time travel story. Because they wanted to do the time travel story before he found the book, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And so they were trying to figure out how to get into it. And then that hook of what if you went to school with your parents? I mean, most people wouldn't go that far with it. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to what I said before about the genius of the Bobs. They are just one of a kind, or two of a kind, I should say. But they're incredible. And yeah, who knows what would have happened if he never had that random thought. Maybe he would have had some thought at a supermarket about something else, and the story would be completely different.
Yeah, maybe they have a different idea of Back to the Future and they go into it a different way, or they do. I mean, there's the butterfly effect, which is actually one of the great things about Back to the Future. It makes everyone think of that. Like, what if I didn't meet this person at this time and have this interaction? My whole life could potentially be different. If Bob Gale didn't have this moment in his parents' attic or his basement, the parents' basement. We don't have basements in Texas, so that's why I always call it an attic. His parents' basement, everything could have been so much different. And, even though this started the trail of Back to the Future, as we talked about, the script was completely different. And it's always fascinating for me to see how it starts, like a screenplay starts versus what we end up finally getting, especially because the Back to the Future screenplay is so tight and well thought out and taught in classes because it's so great and pays everything off. It's interesting to see the first draft. I could be completely making this up. Did you say you had written a screenplay before? Am I making that up? Or you had worked on one?
No.
No, you didn't? Why do I remember you saying something like that? Did you ever try to?
No.
No? I'm confusing you with somebody else then. I'm sorry. But like I've written a couple things, and it's interesting because it's true. That first draft is, I think, just getting the idea out. Like, let me get it on paper. And then you sit and you think about it 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 and you kind of move things around a little bit more. But I just think that yearbook is such a great find, man. It's got to be, where do you rank it in your Back to the Future memorabilia? Is it high up on the list?
Honestly, as of right now, it is probably number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's so right now, most of my collection is kind of stored away, pending some, like, finishing my basement and stuff like that, putting a little bit more room to display it. But when I do get things back out of storage, it will probably be, in my opinion, the center point. It'll be the focal point of how I display things. And going back to what you said about how everyone has their items that, their Magna Carta items and stuff like that. There's various levels of Back to the Future fans, and specifically Back to the Future collectors. And there's a lot of people that are much more casual about it, and they don't necessarily know the history of that yearbook. They don't care about having stuff like that. They just want the action figures, the scale model, stuff like that. And that's fantastic. I mean, I love that people get the stuff that they want. So this yearbook isn't necessarily that Magna Carta item for everyone, but for people that are diehard devoted and a little bit obsessive like me, like, finding that was just, the tip of the iceberg for me. Like, it doesn't get better than that. So I don't want to say it's all downhill from there, because there's still plenty of other great stuff out there, but it's something I'm very happy and proud to own. I think I've mentioned in the past that my wife is very supportive of my addiction and understands it, but she's not a fanatic like me. She tolerates it at best, is the best way of saying it. And so there's times, these random eBay things that I'll get, or just some from someone or somewhere else, things will come in, and she'll be like, "Oh, great," like, it just kind of like roll her eyes a little bit, like, "Oh, great, you needed another DeLorean," kind of thing. When this yearbook came in and I showed her and I explained it, even like her eyes were like, "Wow, that is cool." Like, she was like impressed. And I was like, all right, that's how I know this was a good item. Like, for her to be like, "Oh man, that is really cool." Like, I was like, all right, now not that I wasn't happy with the purchase, but like now it's justified to me. Like just seeing people's reactions to that. And I had some friends over last week, and we had been talking, and they knew I was a big Back to the Future guy, and they were like, how much do you actually own? So I showed them like, the stuff, and they asked like, what's like the piece that's like the top, and I told them about the yearbook, and they were like, okay, that is awesome.
It's
I
a
was like,
really
yeah,
awesome find. It really
yeah,
is. And to have that, I think is just because you got to think. I don't look a small town in Missouri. I don't know how many of these people actually were in. I mean, how many were in the graduating class in both years, right? In January and in June. You don't know how many of these things were made, and out of the ones that made, you don't know how many of them are still around. Most of the people from that graduating class, probably safe to say, like, there might be a few of them still around, maybe. Maybe
yeah,
we're talking, people who have to be knocking on the door to 100 or more. So it's safe to say there's not a lot of them still around. So now these items are in the care of relatives of some kind, sitting in boxes and storage units, I'm sure. So we don't know how many of them were produced. And out of those, how many were produced, how many of them are still around. And out of the ones that are still around, how many of them are in that great of a condition from what that one looks like just on the surface from me seeing it through the Zoom chat. It's got to be a rare find. We're talking just a few hundred of these have to be in existence.
yeah. If that, I'm sure a lot have been just lost to time, destroyed, stuff like that. And as you saw when I opened it, like, you go to Bob Gale or Mark Gale's page, and the page is still like pure white. It's not ripped, it's not weathered, it's not discolored, anything like that. So this has probably just been sitting around closed in some person's attic or somewhere in storage for many, many years, and now it's here with me.
Now it's here with Eric Tate, of all people. And okay, one more question. When you say you're going to put it as the centerpiece of the basement, are you decking the basement out like all Back to the Future? Are you going to have like the quintessential Back to the Future man cave? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, this is kind of all in theory right now, but I am hoping in the near future to redo my basement, gut it, and finish it. And yeah, so the room I'm in right now that you can see is my office at home, which is the spare bedroom in our house.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to eventually have that be an actual spare bedroom and move myself into the basement. And when I do, that's where stuff will come and go out on display.
And because you can really get a little wild with the decorating of the basement. You've thought about it.
I've got pictures in my mind of how this would all work out. And yeah, that yearbook would definitely be right there. There's been a couple times that I've wanted to, ask Bob Gale, like his thoughts on it and just hear more directly from him. I ran into him in LA at Universal Fan Fest a couple weeks ago. But obviously I wasn't going to, make him stop and chat with me. So I just said a quick hello and moved on. But I would love one day to just chat with him about hearing more of his story with this. Like you said, I'm sure, unfortunately, most, if not all of the people in this yearbook have probably passed away by now. But like, for example, the vice president of his class, how cool would it be to chat with like that vice president's child or grandchild and hear like, hey, are you familiar with, your grandpa and how he was in school? I'm sure they'd probably say, no, I have no idea. But it would be cool if someone had a story about like, yeah, I heard that, my grandpa was friends with Mark and they used to, go out partying all the time. I would love to just hear some cool story about that, but
yeah,
who knows?
because he really is if we call Bob Gale the father of the future, I mean, literally Mark Gale is the grandfather of the future. And to hear more about him, those are the things I like. Those are the things I nerd out about. And like, man, wow, I just want to dig deep and find out more in general. So you've got yourself, in my opinion, probably the holy grail of Back to the Future collectibles. And now I'm extremely jealous and will probably buy every Dial yearbook I can find. I'll get 39. I'll get 41. I don't know if I'll ever get 40, but now I'm going to be on the hunt and on the lookout because that's something that I would love to have too. Let me ask you this.
Telling you, if we ever cross paths in person, I'll hand it to you. Feel free to flip right through it. So
I'll flip through it, but then I'll take off with it. No, we do have to meet in person one day. I'm sure that we will. I know that you were at WrestleMania 40. Right, as was I, but there was no way we could have found one another in that sea of people.
No.
And the security that was there and the frigid temperatures probably would have shortened our patience to try to find one another, but we will do it. Let me ask you this, just a little bit of a crossover. If you were to cast Marty and Doc, but they were pro wrestlers.
Oh, gosh.
Who are you going with?
I
think I got this question at a Comic-Con about a year ago when I was doing a panel, and it did stump me for quite some time. I believe I said Doc was the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, that's where my mind was going at first, because even though Macho Man wasn't blonde, I'm thinking about just the hair and the persona, and I'm also kind of in a little tangent. I'm thinking about Roger Bart's performance as Doc Brown from the musical, and how he was a little bit more comedic with the role and animated. And I'm envisioning that cross with Macho Man. I could just see that comparison. So I'm going to go with you on that. I'm going to say Macho Man is going to be Doc. Oh, Marty's
a hard one. It really is. There's some names out there. Maybe like a Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Maybe, I'm trying to think of somebody who's like young and cool.
I've got one. I won't say the name till I describe my reason, but I'm thinking like someone who's confident, but still a little reserved, kind of like Marty was. And he was a confident guy, but, wasn't confident in himself enough for like turning in his tape to the record company, stuff like that. So he still had some reservations. Someone who kind of in a way maybe felt like they lived in the shadows a little bit. So I'm going to go with an earlier babyface Owen Hart.
Wow. That, you know what? There we go. That is a great answer. Owen Hart as Marty, Macho Man as Doc. Come on. Heaven, help us out here. That is a hell of a duo there. I'd love to see it. And let me ask you this too before I get you out of here. You've seen the touring production of the musical, right? Big differences between that and the Broadway show?
Yeah. So I've only seen the touring production once. It was while I was in Chicago. And it's not quite like you're seeing it on Broadway. For obvious reasons, when you're in Broadway and you have your permanent location, you can do a lot more with it versus traveling. So there are a couple differences with the big ending. You saw it on Broadway, so you know what the big ending is like. Yeah. So the big ending is more like a medium ending. I'm trying not to like spoil it for anyone.
No, I agree.
But it's not quite the same, but it's still good. And the cast, these are all people that would do the job significantly better than I would. So they're all fantastic actors. You're not getting, I don't want to say this in a negative way. Like if you're talking about like A+ performers on Broadway, then like B+ to A- performers on the tour. They're still great, but it's not Roger Bart. It's not Casey Likes. It's not from the UK, like Ollie Dobson when he was the original cast, stuff like that. So they're still great. Anyone that has the opportunity to go see it on the national tour, I highly suggest they do. But boy, do I miss the Broadway run. Oh, it was so great.
Yeah, the Broadway experience is something that I'm so happy that I actually got to feel and see for myself because, the big ending. It's a big ending. As one time Elaine ordered the big salad, it's the big ending, right? And 100% is it's still, and it's not just because it was Back to the Future. I've seen several shows on Broadway, and it is the most impressive Broadway production I've seen to date. It could
special
be topped,
effects alone were fantastic.
That's what I was like, wow. And that's why I understand the amount of effects that were in the Broadway version. I understand that you can't bring those on the road. It's just you need something to where it's there night in, night out. And you need a lot of time to probably set those things up and be able to pay them off. And especially when you're touring in different theaters, every theater has a different setup and a different grid and a different this and a different that. And it's just hard to bring all those things to life on the road because you're there for a week and then you're off to the next one. It's tough.
Yeah. Now with Broadway, knowing that you know the ending and what happens and all that, I was at the very final performance on Broadway. I brought my wife and daughter, and we had the direct center seats of the second row. So think about the ending and think about the view we had for that ending. Exactly. Yep.
God, you do so many cool things, and I'm so jealous of you. You live close to New York. You can do the Broadway. You got the yearbook. You've got a basement, which is really one leg above me here. I don't have a basement where I can have this Back to the Future man cave. I got a corner of a room. So, so you're living the dream, Eric Tate. CollectBTTF.com on all the social medias. Again, thank you for your contribution to my book. It added so much. I truly mean that. And man, I will see you in the future, my brother.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.